At 6 a.m., the doorbell hammered like a fist, and when I cracked the door, I saw a woman in a beige blazer with a smile, sharp as a box cutter. Two guys in black jackets flanking her like movie extras with security stitched on. But no badges. She lifted a paper and said in that clipped HOA voice, "You have 24 hours to comply, or your gate fob gets shut off, and right." Then my son Miles was on the stairs, hugging his toy truck, while my wife Jenna slept after a hospital night shift. And I knew if I stepped back now, we'd get shoved right out of the neighborhood. We worked years to afford. You know what I mean. I'm Caleb Turner, aircraft maintenance. Grease on my knuckles more days than not. We live in Maple Grove in Riverton, Arizona. Pretty trees, a man-made lake that looks perfect at golden hour, and a stack of CC Plus R's so heavy you could use it as a doorstop. And the woman on my porch was our HOA president, Paula Kensington. The kind of person who says community standards like she's reciting scripture, and for the last 2 weeks my inbox had filled with all caps subject lines at 5 a.m. Garage door, non-compliance with a blurry photo that could have been any door trash bins visible. Though I'd tucked them behind the fence, landscaping violation, even though I'd paid to cut the grass to 3 inches each. Notice stacking fees like poker chips, and ending with that cold little word lien. And I won't lie, it got inside my head, made me feel small in my own kitchen. Paula tapped the paper. Said it was courtesy to warn me face to face. One of the security guys shifted like he wanted me to move, and I kept my hand on the door. Heart, steadying the way it does when you torque a stubborn bolt. Slow and even. And I asked for the actual violation. With a date, a signature. The clause number in the CC Plus and R's, and the guy on the right said, "Best not to argue, sir," like we were already guilty, like the conversation was just a formality. And I heard Miles whisper, "Dad, are we in trouble?" And I thought, not today. So I told them, "If you have legitimate paperwork, I'll review it. If not, you're trespassing, and I need you off my porch." And Paula gave me a smile that wasn't a smile, and marched off with those 2 men trailing behind heels, ticking on the concrete like a metronome. And it should have ended there. Right, but it didn't. The next week, the pressure got more creative. My fob went red at the pool, so I had to tell Miles we'd swim another day, yeah. That happened. A ticket showed up for overnight street. Parking at 3:47 a.m., with a photo that magically had the same cracked curb as a picture from last week. And I reached the point where I was too tired to be mad. I was just done. So I made coffee, opened the CC Plus and R's, read every clause like it was a maintenance manual, and realized the supposed rules. Paula quoted didn't exist, the way she said landscaping couldn't exceed 6 inches. We were at 3 with a fresh invoice stapled to my fridge. Nothing in writing about closing the garage in 15 minutes. And the board minutes talked about hiring external enforcement without naming a licensed company, which smelled like trouble. So I switched from defense to offense, turned on my doorbell camera, and started asking questions out loud at the front gate. 2 days later, those same black jackets were leaning on the rail. I asked for their state licenses, and one mumbled, "We're temp." Paula pays cash, which was a moment where the whole story tilted, because if you've actually got authority, you don't whisper it, you show it. So I hit record, thanked them, walked away, and shared the clip with a couple neighbors. Then the floodgates opened. Tom across the street had his pergola got fined, even though he had pre-approval, and now his approval file had vanished. Lana at the cul-de-sac had gotten a foreclosure threat despite paying on time. And it wasn't just my family anymore. It was a pattern. And patterns are the first thing you look for when something keeps breaking. That's when I met Rose Delgado, a retired civil attorney with soft eyes and a voice that carries like an honest clock. She sat at her kitchen table with the sunlight hitting a bowl of oranges and went through my emails, photos, and the temp security video like she was reading x-rays. And she said, "Caleb, this isn't about paint colors. It's about process." They skipped notice. They skipped cure. They skipped a fair hearing. And they used unlicensed guys to intimidate you. So here's what you do. You file a written request for records. You ask for the contract with the security company for any spending tied to enforcement. For signed violation logs, you demand a hearing under the bylaws within 7 days. And you notify the city about unlicensed security without going full flamethrower. Take the air out of the bully by turning on the lights. And she smiled like a teacher who just handed you the answer key and said, "You can win this without yelling." I mailed the letters. Certified, I flagged the clauses with yellow highlighter, like a trail. I taped the deadlines to the fridge next to Miles's homework. I told Jenna, this isn't just our problem anymore, and she put a hand on my shoulder and said, "Then let's fix it right." And the very next morning before the deadline for our hearing, an intent to lien showed up, stamped and smug. And that night, Jenna's fob was dead at 11:30 after a surgery shift, and she had to call the official gate guard to let her in. Standing in the sodium light, with her hair stuck to her forehead. And I swear, that's when my anger cooled into something sharper. Because humiliation is a fuel if you use it right. I posted the video. No insults. Just facts, lined up like parts on a workbench. Invited everyone to a special meeting, and when we walked into Community Hall that evening, the room was shoulder to shoulder with neighbors. Phones out and ready to defend Paula. Some curious, some just tired of the drama. And Paula sat in the middle like a general behind a folding table. Tapping a pen, Gavin and Monica, 2 board members on either side. Trying not to make eye contact with anyone, and I stepped to the mic. Not to perform, just to tell the truth. The way you tell a mechanic what you hear under the hood. Slow and specific. And I laid out 4 things. The garage photo had no timestamp, and my camera showed the door shut. In 3 minutes, the lawn invoice showed 3 inches. While the rule allowed 6, the lien threat came before any hearing, and the security clip captured men admitting they were temps paid cash. With no license, then I hit play on the video, and the room changed temperature. Paula leaned into the mic and said, "We cannot let standards slip, or property values will collapse. Same sermon, different Sunday." And I said, protecting value isn't the same as fabricating rules and outsourcing intimidation to 2 guys in unmarked jackets. Then Tom raised a notice with no signature and said he'd paid a bogus fine to avoid the fight. Lana said she'd stayed quiet out of fear. A teenager waved his phone and announced he had another clip at the gate, and you could feel it that moment when a neighborhood stops whispering and starts speaking in daylight. Rose stood, and in that calm teacher voice reminded everyone, the bylaws require clear notice, a chance to cure, and a fair hearing. That threatening a lien before process is backwards. That hiring unlicensed enforcers is reckless and corrosive to trust. And she recommended suspending all fines against my family, while an independent review runs, plus an audit of enforcement spending. And I watched Gavin glance at Monica and nod. Small at first, then certain. And he said the board would vote to suspend and investigate, and Paula slammed her pen like a gavel and said, "If we go soft, the community will descend into chaos." And I said, chaos doesn't come from people asking for proof. It comes from people turning rules into a stick to swing at whoever they don't like. And that's when Monica lifted a thin stack of reimbursement slips and read a name out loud. Trevor Kensington, which turned the room into a held breath because it was Paula's nephew, paid from HOA funds for security work without a public contract, and I swear you could hear someone's phone case creak in their hand. Gavin called an immediate vote. Arms went up across the room, and with a voice that trembled but didn't break, he announced Paula was suspended as president pending a recall vote, and the sound that followed wasn't cheers. Not exactly. It was air coming back into people's lungs, and Paula scanned the room for a friendly face, and found none, and walked out with her heels sounding hollow on the floor. And I didn't pump a fist or smile. I just set my folder down and felt my shoulders drop for the first time in weeks. Afterward, the parking lot buzzed like a Friday game night. Neighbors trading stories they'd swallowed for years. Tom clapped my back and said, "You reminded me I'm allowed to speak." Lana laughed through tears and said, "Maybe I'll rebuild my pergola." Even the kid with the phone said the video was for truth, not clout, and Rose squeezed my arm and said, "Look around. Fear is breaking its habit." And I believed her. But I also knew this wasn't over, because power doesn't go quietly. It regroups. A week later, we're heading into a recall. I don't know which way the vote will swing. I don't hate Paula, and I don't plan to. I'm just not giving anyone the keys to my dignity again. And if someone knocks at 6 a.m. with a flimsy paper and 2 guys without credentials, I won't be the only porch light that turns on. That's the real change, the part you can't put back in the box. So tell me where you land on this. Do you think strong enforcement keeps a neighborhood livable? Or do you think rules without fairness are just tools for control? Have you seen a Paula in your HOA or your workplace or your kid's school? And if you were on our board, what would you do about unlicensed security and a nephew on the payroll? Drop your take, push back. If you disagree, share your own story. And if you believe everyday people can drag nonsense into the sunlight just by saying, "Show me the evidence, hit like, subscribe, and send this to the next person who hears that early morning knock and thinks they have to open the door alone."